Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me this afternoon, we have Quinn, CTO of Tanium, Kevin Bocek, Chief Innovation Officer of Venafi, and Pukar Hamal, founder and CEO of SecurityPal. And we're here to discuss how to solve the challenges that AI agents and coding assistants will present that ensure that humans are working together and alongside emerging automation technologies. Gentlemen, it's great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks, and we'll go around the horn quickly. Matt, let's kick it off with you. Tell us about where Tanium sits within the automation ecosystem.
So Tanium, converged endpoint management. So where we sit is we're all about change on the endpoints. And so all the automation that we do is trying to make sure that all of the change that you put in the endpoints, that you can automate it at scale. And so lots and lots of change, doing it alongside people, making sure that all of that change is very, very secure and remediated.
Yeah. And Kevin, what about Venafi? Where do you sit within the automation ecosystem?
Yeah, so out there in the world, of course, on network, on the internet, there are two actors. There are humans and machines. And Venafi is about securing every identity for machines. And that can be from out to the cloud all the way now to large language models, and especially at the core of the digital infrastructure. At our customers, every machine must have an identity because we must authenticate and authorize it. And from an automation perspective, that is about driving down errors and efficiencies by putting machines in place of humans to do that work and reduce risk.
Mm-hmm. And Pukar, tell us about the work you're doing at SecurityPal.
Thanks, Jill. Good to be here. We're the customer assurance company. So what we're doing is we're streamlining and automating how businesses handle security reviews, vendor assessments, security questionnaires, RFPs. A major deal at my last startup actually blew up because we were about to go sign the deal and a 200 question InfoSec review came in, and it completely derailed the whole process. And now we're applying AI as well as a team of experts. So you really need to combine both automation that's driven by AI as well as a team of human experts. And we do that probably better than anybody else to really help organizations move quickly through these last minute, last mile security questionnaires, vendor assessments to ensure that the commercial transactions gets done.
Yeah, and we appreciate you sharing that anecdote with us. But Pukar, let's talk about automation to detect threats. Of course, October Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and there's clearly an immense rise in cyber threats. Not to mention that the technologies the bad actors are using are the same as the good actors, right? So they're more sophisticated. How is this how is this evolving the way you think about automation when it relates to detecting threats?
Well, the thing is, with any technology, like the good guys are going to have it, but so are the bad guys, and the bad guys are really motivated, right? With any immense rise, like with the immense rise in cyber threats and sophistication from attacks globally, you need automation. Automation can really be your friend. But the challenge is, how do you actually like scale that for threat detection, for rapid response time, for resolutions? We really feel like AI agents have the opportunity to actually enable and empower teams to do a lot more. So what one human or one person could do before, you can potentially 10x the effectiveness and scale of that with AI agents paired with humans. And that's where I think the value really lies for businesses today. And there's tons of repetitive tasks that need to get done, right? It's doing the same thing over and over again, scanning, monitoring, and that's where the real opportunity is.
Yeah. And Kevin, you ask a really interesting question, and the most important question: how do security leaders, they need to know this answer before committing to using AI, right? And this is, does it have an identity? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so from a machine identity security perspective, every piece of software that's code running on the internet or in our data centers must have an identity, because actually, thousands of years ago, Aristotle said, hey, if something exists, it must have an identity. If it doesn't have identity, it must exist. So we have to be able to know clearly, not just we have to know, is it good, bad, friend, or foe? A piece of software, especially now too, is developers are using AI coding assistants, creating so much more code and bringing that. Is that friend or foe? And the way that we know that is by its identity, establishing that. And when it comes to automation, I mean, that is just driving more and more software, more and more machines. So we have to be able to identify and be able to authenticate at all times, whether that's a large language model, whether that's a bot, whether that's a piece of cloud software doing work for our business.
Yeah. And Matt, you point out that it's only effective in detecting threats if there's real-time data that's powering artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So let's keep it simple. Automation, especially when done at scale, is great because you can continually evaluate the threat landscape. That's awesome. Add AI to the mix, and you can start to look for kind of novel patterns, and that's excellent as well. But you've got to pair that with kind of the real-time context of your actual operating environment as it looks like today. Because at that point, you can actually start to take action and remediate. And that's when you actually start to see the real benefit, because you can start to fix the actual issue. Because looking at the issue, finding it, great, but you've got to actually remediate and fix it.
Yeah. And Kevin, I've noted at the top that new technology from AI agents to AI coding, it's here and it's here to stay. Now, how do you think about that in the context of pairing that with humans as it relates to automation and making sure that the redundancies are there?
Well, I think what we've seen is as much as possible as we can take the place where humans create risk and errors just because of the size and scale, especially now as we are digital businesses. Great example of that. I'm sure everyone has faced this. You've gone to a website and there's a certificate outage. The website says it can't be trusted. And there are thousands, tens of thousands of many of those machine identities that create those types of errors. So looking to pair software that eliminates those errors, that takes a lot of the tedious security tasks out of teams so that those errors don't occur, is one way I know that CISOs and business leaders are driving automation and creating actually real business value from it.
And Pukar, clearly there's a hiring boom as it relates to AI. And I don't even think it's something that's coming, but something that's here. And there's so much data that these AI agents are generating. How do you square that circle, if you will, as it relates to human oversight?
Yeah, I think you're always going to need human oversight. The reality is that most software in the future, or in the near future, I think is going to be written by software itself, by AI. Most of these applications are going to be built by AI, whether at the beginning, middle, or end, and these are still going to require lots of human oversight. And I think the reason is, if you think about it, you can have an AI agent, you can have an AI workflow, and let's say that the workflow has 10 steps, right? And even if each step is 99% accurately delivered by the AI, 99% to the 10th power is 90%. And I don't know many workflows where organizations would be okay with 1 out of every 10 thing failing, right? We wouldn't be okay with 1 out of every 10 paycheck not being delivered. We wouldn't be okay with 1 out of every 10 new product that we launched having a series of bugs. And so this is why it's so important for us to understand, how do we think about access to the software? How do we think about giving the AI good data structures? How do we think about giving it good agency? And then, of course, the context matters a lot. And this is one of the reasons why we've invested so heavily in the human expertise layer. As AI sort of eats away at all of these repetitive tasks at the low end of a lot of these workflows, humans are shifting the work to more of the expertise layer. And we've actually built a 24/7 security operations command center with 200 cybersecurity trained certified experts that are actually reviewing the work of AI to make sure it's actually correct, is context, is aware, and is nuanced, right? And those things are really important if we're actually to be able to properly scale these to close that last 1% gap, because the last mile is going to be critical for us to actually scale these applications.
Right. Well, Pukar, it makes sense at the end of the day when you think about that. The whole point of these technologies is to drive home those efficiencies so that humans can think about more complex situations or strategies. The whole point of this is to almost force us to think harder, right? So, to completely remove it, I think would almost be the antithesis of what this has been designed for when you think about it in that respect. And then, Matt, the expectation of having a human in control, I mean, even just from the basic reporting and regulatory perspective, you have to have a human there, right? And you still need to be able to communicate these things.
Yeah. And that's where I think, as you think about automation, and we see this with our customers, as they put in automation, they look at it as baseload, right? It's doing all the things that have high error rates, high repeatability, where there is, high expertise requirements, and it's allowing their experts to go off and do things that they haven't been able to do, strategic projects. But then that governance aspect is incredibly important. You've got to make sure that it's actually in there. And so you've got to engineer your organizations for actually putting in governance. Whereas before it was actually in there with humans. Now you've actually got to start to design systems, design automation with governance really at the basic level. And that is incredibly important from a product point of view, as well as from a change management point of view when you're putting automation tools in place, especially in endpoint management and other technologies.
Yeah. So Matt, let's lift the curtain back here for a moment, right? Tell us about some experience you have in building AI-driven security products such as Tanium, right? Like what goes into that?
Look, it's funny. The one thing that we've seen more than anything else is the impact on the individual. And you see it from the developers who are using AI tools assisting them with coding. It affects their workflow. It affects how they work. You look at organizations and it affects organizational workflows. And so the thing that we've had to deal with more than anything else is not just the possibility of these AIs, the possibility of automation. It's the changes of that human machine interface and how that affects the workflows. And so that has actually been the biggest learning for us, is putting the humans back into the loop and how you can actually get those efficiencies by thinking about the human early as you're building those security products, as you're building those endpoint management products, when you're thinking about AI and the efficiencies it can bring. It's actually been humbling, right? You just don't plug AI in and say, great, we're going to solve everything. You've got to put the humans back in as well.
Yeah. And then Kevin, when we think about what's next for automation in 2025, these emerging technologies, data begets more data. This conversation could look different even just 6 months from now. So what's next for automation when you think about 2025 and longer term?
Well, we're dealing with a whole new set of risks as well. We look to the future, things like post-quantum readiness, computers that can break today's existing cryptography, what that can mean for business. And the impact that we're seeing already that, around, for example, coding assistance. All code is just a machine. So we have to be able to give it an identity, a machine identity, and be able to secure it through its life. Because as we think ahead, the way we're going to have a kill switch over AI is not going to be through some switch in a data center where we turn something off. It's actually going to be based on identity. So that idea of kill switch, especially as we look ahead to AI, is something that our customers are coming to us looking for about how they can drive that then into their business, be prepared for the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I keep hearing more and more about quantum computing and some of the challenges that has on the horizon. But Kevin, is the industry thinking about that enough, or solutions being thought of? I can kind of tell in the cycle with pitches I get for the show, keep hearing about quantum computing and some of the crypto challenges that are going to evolve from that.
Right. Well, boards now are starting to get asked questions from auditors, and then chief security officers are beginning to ask the question. So it is beginning to percolate. So that is good, because the risk ahead could be quite immense. I mean, we think about it, for the last 30, 40 years, everything digital we've based upon is really about the authentication and privacy that you can create between two machines, whether it be your web browser or whether it be payments terminal or in government. So that is a risk that is very real. When that risk might come, we don't know. So this is really a generational challenge of preparing for post-quantum readiness. And that's something that we're working with customers on, to make sure that the machine identity systems allow us to know if something good or bad, friend or foe, will be ready as we transition. And again, it's a generation. It's not a Y2K, there's one date. This could be a set of risks that we face over next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, when I started reading about it and researching it for the show and for my own knowledge, my first thought was that this could be transformational and perhaps not necessarily in a good way. So we will certainly follow up to learn more on that. Pukar, when you think about automation going into 2025 and perhaps longer term, what are some of the trends you're going to be looking for?
Well, I think security is one of the biggest risks, right? I mean, we just saw this incredible advancements with the latest large language models from OpenAI o1 to, Anthropic just released computer use, where the software and AI can actually use your device. I mean, when we think about things like that, what does that really mean? Are we prepared to give control of our full device to these machines, to the AI, right? Are we prepared to give super admin access to all of these applications, right? How do we actually assess the vendors and assess the actual partners that we're looking for? Like, we're going to have to do much more thorough assessments of our vendors. Are they good stewards of our data? What is actually happening with the data? And this is why one of the biggest things, the trends that we're seeing is we're seeing a lot more concern around vendors, what's going on with the data, more questions being asked about, are companies building their own AI models? Are they using state-of-the-art AI models? Those are the trends that I'm really looking for. I also think another trend that we're going to be seeing is actually just general repatriation of data. I think, cloud, we had this whole decade plus run where we moved to the cloud. And I think for certain data and certain workflows, especially if we're going to give full access to the AI, to our devices, to our machines, to our clusters, we're going to want that within our own sort of like air-gapped, gardens, where we can have full visibility and control over these things. But I think fundamentally it's about, there's going to be some things that we trust outside vendors for, some things we don't. And I think there's going to be just a lot more scrutiny of all of the vendors and applications that we end up using over the future. And that's part of the reason why I'm really excited about where SecurityPal is positioned today.
Yeah, it's really interesting because for the month of, we cover cybersecurity year round on Trade Talks, but more specifically in October for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I will tell you, third-party vendor risk, it came up consistently and a number of times throughout the interview. So it's almost like those diagrams with the bubbles. The biggest bubble certainly was third-party vendor risk. And of course, quantum computing kind of getting bigger as we went throughout the month. Matt, when we think about your perspective in 2025 and beyond, what are you going to be looking for?
Well, actually, look, what are we talking about here? We're talking about automation. We're not just talking about AI. We're actually talking about the application of AI to go do something. And I think actually in 2025, we all have to admit the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to AI, right? It's here. And so I think 2025, we're going to see two things. Tale of two cities. We're going to see, on one hand, incredible FUD. Is AI worth it? What's the fear? We've talked about the kill switches and all the rest of it. We're going to see more and more of this. And then on the other side, you're going to start to see this incredible application of AI. We're learning how to use it, how to apply it in different places. The fact that we're talking about automation, applying AI to go do something, in the sphere of cybersecurity, is a step in that direction. And I think that's really where 2025 is going to be. Learning how to use this new invention, applying it in new places, really seeing where it's going to go. And that, for me, is the promise of 2025.
Yeah. All right. Well, look forward to continuing that conversation in 2025. Appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you.
Thank you.